Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. It's your intergalactic e-girl from Crippletown giving you some disabled vibes here because today we're going to be talking about my disability. Right off the bat, I'd just like to mention that I'm not making this video to gain any form of sympathy from anyone. So if you were planning on going to the comment section below and saying that I'm also strong just because I'm disabled, please don't do that. The main reason I'm making this video is to educate people because a lot of people do not understand what Spina Bifida Myelomeningocele is. So I was born on the 4th of December in 1997 in this small hill station in India known as Lonavala. My mother was forced to deliver me in this little shitty hospital where she was undercared for. She was not given the right amount of help. It was really tough for her. I'm not sure exactly what they told my parents as soon as I was born, but basically I was born with this lump on my back. It was as big as a walnut, but for like an infant, I suppose it was pretty big. What they suggested was they should get me operated immediately. So a month after that, they got me operated because as time passed, the lump started to grow. And finally, they operated on me. They thought they got rid of the lump, but they didn't. The water inside my lump started to ooze out, and that's when everything got even worse. Guys, I just wanted to clarify that this happened within a 5-year period. So my next surgery happened when I was 5 years old. I had an epileptic seizure that nearly resulted in me losing my life. My heart stopped for like a second or two. This is according to my mother. So due to that, they had to reoperate on me. Now keep in mind, these guys were not going for aesthetics at the time. They just wanted to put a tape over this overflowing dam, which was their failed attempt at my first surgery, by just stitching me up however it felt suitable. This resulted in me having a very sensitive back growing up. I mean, you could literally just graze over my operated area and I could have a gag reflex from it because the pain was so immense. This, however, was somehow magically cured like a year ago when I started getting massage, and this lady that massages me really went in on that particular area. But now I'm fine. Like I can literally just touch it now, press it, do whatever I want, and nothing happens, thankfully. Now, apart from the 2 surgeries that I received, I also received another surgery when I was 10 years old on my pelvic bone. This was extremely futile for me. It didn't do anything for my legs. I didn't walk clearly, and all it did was give me a lot of trauma. The trauma that it caused me will continue to haunt me for the rest of my life because I was so poorly handled by the hospital staff. This wasn't some shitty little hospital in some alleyway in Lonavala. This was actually a well-renowned hospital branch in India that I got treated at. The hospital staff did not deal with me like they would deal with a patient. Instead, they dealt with my family and I like we were a customer walking into a shop to buy shitloads of stuff. What they did was they sold us the idea that if we operate on my pelvic bone, my knee bone will automatically release, resulting in my legs being completely straight. And then all I need is some physiotherapy to be able to build my muscle up and then be able to run like Usain Bolt. Now that I'm older, I realized that that was a sales tactic for them just so they could get in another client, because how would that physically be possible? And apart from that, the nurses were so horrible. When a child is scared about being operated on, you're supposed to give it time so that they can be comforted by their family, and then you should come in and further comfort them because the kid doesn't know any better. Instead, what they did was they held me by my arms, they lifted me up with my legs dangling, not even holding my legs at the bottom, and they just took me into the operation theater. And trust me, I was calm until that very moment. I had emotionally and mentally prepared myself for that surgery. But all of my preparedness went out of the window the minute these women caught me by my arm. I'm aware that a lot of you guys might be wondering, what is myelomeningocele? What causes it? Could it happen to me or a family member of mine? And what could I do to prevent it? And to answer those questions, I got my friend Ibrahim all the way from Berlin to participate in this video, since he is an actual medic and he probably knows much more about my disability than even I might ever know. So take it away, Ibrahim.
Thank you, Anjana, for having me. I'm Ibrahim from the Charité Hospital in Berlin. Now, if we move to week 3 in embryological development, the nervous system starts out as a flat plate, which will then fold to become a tube. And that neural tube will eventually become the spinal cord, with the brain forming at its upper end. Now, if the neural tube fails to close properly, the child will be born with a neural tube defect. The most common type is myelomeningocele, affecting around 5 in 10,000 births. Now, rarely does the neural tube fail to close entirely. It's usually just a small portion that remains open. And if the tube remains open, then the muscle and the skin above it remains open as well. So in myelomeningocele, the affected portion of the spinal cord, along with the thin tissue surrounding it, protrude through that opening and form a transparent sac on the back of the baby. There are 2 main threats to the unborn baby. First, the spinal cord is exposed to amniotic fluid, which has toxic effects on neural tissue. So there may be an irreversible damage to neurons, which may in turn lead to numbness or weakness of the legs, or even bladder or bowel dysfunction. So patients with myelomeningocele may have frequent and severe urinary tract infection. And secondly, and for this we have to keep in mind that our brain and our spinal cord are surrounded by a fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid. And that fluid is produced inside of our brain, draining downwards. The circulation of that cerebrospinal fluid is strictly regulated. So in patients with myelomeningocele, that cerebrospinal fluid is leaking from the body through the defect on their back. Now think of the spinal cord running up towards your head, eventually becoming the brainstem as it enters the skull through a hole called the foramen magnum. Now behind the brainstem, we have the hindbrain. What happens is, as the CSF, as that cerebrospinal fluid is leaking, that fluid leak is pulling the hindbrain downwards and into the foramen magnum. And this causes an obstruction to the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. That fluid now accumulates inside the head, eventually taking up all the space that was supposed to be filled by brain tissue. So now we have a condition called hydrocephalus, which may lead to an impairment of brain development. So many patients with myelomeningocele require a ventriculoperitoneal shunt, meaning a tube that runs underneath the skin, draining fluid from the brain down to the abdominal cavity. Well, we don't exactly know the cause, but research has identified a few risk factors. Moms with diabetes, anti-seizure medication, or folic acid deficiency are a bit more likely to have a child with myelomeningocele. Therefore, if a pregnancy is planned, folic acid should be supplemented as a preventive measure. Prenatal ultrasound is the main diagnostic technique, but there is also a specific protein called AFP that is to be looked for in the mother's blood. AFP is normally found in fetal neural tissue, and since the nerves are exposed, AFP can leak into the amniotic fluid and from there reach the mother's bloodstream. The conventional treatment would be a postnatal repair, ideally within the first 2 days after birth. The spinal cord would be repositioned and then covered by protective layers of muscle and skin. A novel approach is fetal or prenatal repair. It's essentially the same thing, except the surgery is performed inside the mother's womb already. So here, using ultrasound guidance, a small incision would be made into the mother's uterus, and then only the affected portion if the baby's back would be exposed. Results have shown that children that have undergone prenatal repair are twice as likely to gain the ability to walk independently and are less likely to need a ventricular peritoneal shunt. This is a good opportunity to mention two of my role models, one being Dr. Karen Marasco, the first female chairman of neurosurgery in the United States. Born with spina bifida herself, she operates on children with the same condition. And the other being Dr. Samer Al-Baba, the pediatric neurosurgeon who's pioneering the prenatal myelomeningocele surgery in the state of Florida.
There are common misconceptions people have about any disability there may be out there. And due to that, I cannot blame people for wondering, because our minds are constantly evolving, and when we see something that is out of the norm, we constantly want to learn more about it. But due to that, I have had a lot of weird encounters where people would ask me, so can you move your legs? So can you feel your legs? Can you stand like a little bit? Which always freaks me out. Like, if I could stand a little bit, don't you think I would be using crutches and not a wheelchair? Like, how does that ever make sense? Did you ever feel inferior to other children while growing up? Not really, since my parents raised me up in such a way that didn't really make me think much about my disability. The only times I would think about being disabled or not being able to walk would be when I actually was in a hospital being probed on by the doctors. Did you ever feel jealous of girls that could walk/run during PE? Did you ever feel relieved that you didn't have to do those things? Well, when I finally joined school when I was 12 years old, I didn't attend PE. I actually got to have a free lesson during PE. And usually what my classroom teacher would do instead was she would move PE either to the first lesson or to the last lesson. So I could either come to school late or I could leave school early. So I was having a great time. Like, I was really happy about PE. Do you think that guys that fetishize handicapped people seek you out? I mean, I don't know. I don't think there is a market for handicapped fetishes in Azerbaijan. And if they seek me out, clearly I wouldn't be into that, because I would want someone to like me and love me for who I am, not for what I have, really. Are you scared to live alone without assistance? No, actually I want to move out with my best friend Nigar and Sabina at some point in my life, not because I don't want to stay alone, but because I would rather be with them and have them around me, while simultaneously being able to be independent and basically learn to live without my mom, because I'm way too clingy and attached to my mom. But no, I don't think I would have an issue. Do people make assumptions about your mental stability due to your disability? Yes, for sure. In fact, my therapist, of all people, did. She actually thought that I would be going to her to actually talk about my issues due to my disability. But once she got to know me, she actually said, wow, Anjana, your emotional baggage and the issues you have are far worse than anything related to your disability. So people do assume that, but honestly, my disability has nothing to do with my mental health fluctuating here and there at times. So I'd just like to thank you guys for watching today's video. I won't lie, it was a bit tough for me to film and put out, because I had to go through and relive each and every memory I went through while I was in India in the hospital. But I would say that regardless of my disability, I'm really grateful that my case has not been extremely severe, and my heart really goes out to those that have a much more severe case of spina bifida. I can still move my legs, I can still feel my legs. It's just that a huge portion of it is not developed due to the lack of movement and exercise and muscle buildup. To answer any of your questions, if you're wondering, Anjana, do you want to seek medical assistance for your disability to cure it once and for all? And to that, I'm gonna say I honestly don't know if it's guaranteed that I'm going to be cured and I'm going to be able to stand without calipers, then yes, I would go in for it. But if not, if I have to wear calipers, if I have to put myself through even more fucking emotional strain, I'd rather not do it. But if you are someone that is considering getting treated for your disability, and if you have myelomeningocele, spina bifida in specific, I would highly recommend you do it if it is with a good doctor. Do your research, ask the questions, find out, and please make sure you are a patient and not a customer to them. And for those that are not disabled and you're just watching this for your own viewing purposes, thank you for actually sticking through till the very end of this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative. Thank you, Ibrahim, once again for your help. And I will see all of you in the next video. Bye bye.
They never could.